Hello again. This is Michael Whitaker. This is photo post number 13 in the series of 21 posts I'm doing on LinkedIn and sharing on Facebook. The topic of this post is unnoticed, hiding in plain sight. The photo I've chosen for this post is entitled Beseeching Elvis Kelly. It is from a formal project I did that's entitled On the Road to Forever, the Elvis Phenomena. In photo post number 11, I discussed Henri Cartier-Bresson and his notion of the decisive moment. That moment in time where you sort of stop time, capture time, and you've caught something special. Cartier-Bresson had a list of issues that he addressed to help enhance the chances of capturing a decisive moment. One of those techniques he suggested was to become invisible. Of course, it's not possible to become invisible, but the point he was trying to make is the photographer needs to be unnoticed. That when the photographer is noticed, it has the potential of impacting the image that he or she is trying to catch or trying to capture. In the first post number 1 of these posts, I talked about my preference to try to capture reality as opposed to capturing impression management. Impression management is the effort by an individual to control or to manage the impression that's being made on other people. I'm just not interested in managed impressions. So throughout my photography career, I have been interested in trying to capture reality. So I was influenced by Cartier-Bresson. I understood and appreciated his notion of becoming invisible, and I utilize 4 different techniques to try to be unnoticed. I just don't want people to notice me when I'm capturing photographs. When I'm doing candid photographs, I do want to be as invisible as possible. In the post, I've included the 4 primary activities I do or I use to try to remain unnoticed. The first one is getting validated. And this may sound a bit strange because getting validated means getting a press pass or being identified as a member of the group. Or even if you're photographing someone's children, explain to the children, this is a friend of mommy and daddy or whatever. So it's important to get validated. The reason I try to get a press pass when a press pass is available is it cuts down the number of interactions. In fact, it almost reduces the number of interactions when I have to explain who I am and what I'm doing there. When I have that press pass around my neck, people look at it and see it, security and that sort of thing. They don't hassle me and say, what are you doing here? What are you trying to do? They just leave me alone. Most of the people, particularly like in this Elvis project, most of the people that saw the press pass were not that impressed and typically did not bother me. Occasionally somebody who had probably had too many beers would say, hey, you come over here, take my picture, and that sort of stuff. But the press pass reduces the number of times someone may try to stop you and intervene and see what's going on. So with events like this Elvis project, I always got a press pass. When I did the project with the Cruzada Teatro Guantanamo Baracoa in Cuba, I explained to the director of the Cruzada that I just wanted people to forget that I'm there. I don't want attention. I just want to be as invisible as possible. At the beginning of every performance, every night performance, I was introduced as a member of the troupe. Everybody else in the troupe were actors. But they introduced me every single night. I raised my camera and waved as a Nordamericano. But that sort of legitimated me. legitimized what I was doing and didn't make people wonder. If they're wondering who you are and what you're doing, that's going to put a question in their mind, and you might not get the kind of attention that you want. So if you can get validated through a press pass or being identified as someone who should be there, then I think it increases possibilities of going unnoticed. The next issue is simply called blending in, and that may sound a little nonsensical, but I'm never surprised, I'm never shocked when I watch photographers who are trying to catch candid photos and they're walking around in the area where the photos are being captured, and they're dressed in very loud colors or very fancy hats or sunglasses or whatever, because as they're moving around in those brightly colored clothes, it calls attention to them by everybody else around, including the subjects of the photograph. Our granddaughter is a very talented actor, and she's been in a lot of plays and had the lead in one of the musicals not too long ago. And they hired a professional photographer to photograph the play that night. The photographer, a female, showed up in a very brightly colored flowered dress, and you could not help but notice her every time she moved around. If you want to go unnoticed, you have to dress plainly. A photography friend of mine in New Zealand, Harvey Benge, always dresses in a black shirt and black pants because that helps him go unnoticed. Also, if he photographs a reflection in the window, the black attire also helps kill the reflection of him. So it may sound like a simple thing to do, but it's really important not to dress in a manner that's going to call attention to yourself. You really want to be unnoticed. The third thing is what I call being unobtrusive. And it's very much like don't wear loud clothes. Don't be a loud person. Don't be calling attention to yourself. The photographer I mentioned in the very brightly colored dress also moved around a lot. And when she moved around, even the people on stage, the kids on stage, noticed her moving. And if she moved and came over toward them, they had a real good idea that she was about to photograph them, and they took on an unnatural appearance by the time the photographer captured the image. So, just be very careful. I try to be very careful not to call attention to myself. I try to move as little as possible. I personally prefer zoom lenses. I have 2 primary zoom lenses that I use. And the zoom lens enables me to zoom in and out without having to go closer or back off or go to side. I can still stay in my one position, zoom in and out, and I'm not calling attention to myself. I also don't interact with other people when I'm photographing. I don't look at the guy next to me and say, "Oh, great hat, where'd you get that?" I just want to be unnoticed. If I'm interacting with people, they'll notice me. So I try to be as unobtrusive as possible. One other thing in this category is cell phones. I have been at events when photographers have their cell phones go off. Everybody in the room turns to see where the cell phone ringing is. So if you're trying to be unobtrusive, it's better to either put your cell phone on vibrate or do like me, just turn it off altogether. I do not want to be noticed. The fourth and final technique that I use, I call becoming obscure. And it's becoming obscured by frenzied action or dominated attention. And this means exactly what it says. There are times when I photograph something that things get so intense, literally, people forget that I'm there. They are so focused on what's going on in the environment, they don't even imagine that I'm there. So let's go back to the photograph. This photograph is of Elvis Kelly. That's his stage name. His actual name is Kelly Basil. And the last I heard, in 23 years he'd been performing, he had done over 700 performances, which is like over 35 a year. So he's very active. He's very exuberant. He's really into it. He's an excellent, in my opinion, he's an excellent tribute artist. And he just puts on a great show. He had on a leather outfit this day. This photo was taken at the Michigan Elvis Fest in Ypsilanti, Michigan. If you're not familiar with Michigan, Ypsilanti is just a little to the east of Ann Arbor, where the University of Michigan is, and it's pretty good distance west of Detroit. So they have a big Elvis Fest every summer. This was in the summer. It was very hot, and Elvis Kelly was sweating profusely from wearing this leather outfit. He's an entertainment show to behold on his own, but he also gives away scarves that are hanging around his neck. If you look closely right here, these are a couple of scarves that are still hanging around his neck. So while he's performing, he'll select somebody in the audience, pull off that scarf, and hand it down to him. So the people in this photograph, and mostly are females, there's some males in the background, they are reached up the way they're reaching because they want Elvis Kelly to give them one of those brightly colored scarves around his neck. You can see over here on this side, there's actually 3 people that are holding flowers. They're willing to trade flowers for the scarves. So these people are just very actively into reaching up, trying to get the attention of Elvis Kelly because they want one of those scarves. They are focused on Elvis Kelly. This is a long runway that comes out of the stage. There's one on either side of the stage. It just happened to be on the right side of the stage when this photograph was captured. So people are all lined up there wanting to get one of those scarves that he's handing out. This is not staged. This is what I experienced. You can see at the very bottom of the image the edge of the stage right down here. It's not even, but it's still the stage. I was right at the stage. A couple of times I almost lost my balance because there's people on either side of me, so I had to reach out and grab the stage to keep from falling. But I'm right there in the middle of the action. There are people on either side of me, and I would bet money that no one there ever noticed me. I'm standing there. I'm not stretched out to get a scarf. I have a camera in my hand. I'm watching the event through the camera, and no one noticed me. To me, that's an ideal situation. I want to be unnoticed. And I was unnoticed not because of anything I did, but because everyone in the image, except for Elvis Kelly, was caught up in this frenzied action. Their attention was captured. Their attention was dominated by what was going on. I could have stood here all day and captured images, and no one would have ever seen me. So of the 4 things that I try to do to remain unnoticed, number 4, this one is the easiest. I didn't have to do anything. I just took advantage of the frenzied action, and I could capture as many images in as many different directions as I wanted because no one even thought about noticing me. For all practical purposes, I was invisible. So, it sometimes works out that you don't have to do a lot of effort or put out a lot of effort to being invisible. During my first career, I very often was the center of attention. And after a while, I got tired of being the center of attention. I was in a couple of national television programs. where I had speaking parts. They were documentaries, and I would go through airports and people go, hey, you're that guy in that documentary about the Memphis Juvenile Court. And I'd say, yeah. People won't talk. I don't like talking to strangers, but if they stop and go, hey, I saw you on television. So, I had enough in my first career of being the center of attention. I am very happy. In fact, it's probably accurate to say I'm ecstatic to be unnoticed while I'm photographing. I don't have a need to be noticed, and I'm very happy not to be noticed. The favorite thing I hear from people that I have photographed is that when they see the image, they say, I didn't know you were taking pictures of me. And my thought always, and sometimes I express it out loud, is terrific. That was my goal. I did not want you to know I was capturing your image. So being unnoticed is something that can be accomplished. I accomplish it using those 4 activities. And for this particular one, it's the easiest one. You just get lost in the action and take as many images or capture as many images as you want to. I would like to point out one other thing. The last post number 12, I talked about depth of field. This was a nice, bright, sunshiny day in Ypsilanti, Michigan. I have ultimate, maximum depth of field in this photo. If you could look at it up close and personal, you can see even the guitar player all the way in the back is still in focus. So when I talk about maximum depth of field and the complexity, I like complex images. This photograph is a perfect example of how everything in this frame is perfectly in focus. It is the depth of field that I really like to accomplish in my photographs, but it's not always possible. So that's all I have to say about this particular photograph and about being unnoticed. I highly recommend that you try being unnoticed and look at the difference that happens with your photography. Next time, for post number 14, I'm going to show another photo from the Cruzada Teatro Guantanamo Baracoa, but I'm using a photo for that to make the point that in projects like I do, it's okay to editorialize, and I'll explain that more next time. So next time it's the Cruzada again, and we'll talk about the right to editorialize with your photos. As always, I appreciate your attention. I appreciate your interest in finding out what's going on in my head when I'm capturing these 21 images. Tonight was more about techniques, but again, the techniques enable me to focus on my individualized way of viewing the world without having to worry about a lot of other issues. So tonight's on techniques. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see you next time.